One of the most important things in soap opera acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.
Hey, it's me, it's JSB, and today on Acting is Reacting, well, I'm doing something completely different. In the wise words of Steve Hogarth of Marillion, what follows could be described best perhaps as a light. Homage is not really the right word. Cabbage might be nearer to it. What I'm talking about here is the best music channel on the internet, in my opinion, which is the only one that counts, folks. And that is Sea of Tranquillity. Now, if you know Sea of Tranquillity already and you know the UK connection, which this is not. This is literally not the UK connection, or it is disconnected in the UK. I haven't decided on a title yet. I might just put both of them on, probably. So if you know those things already, great, welcome. If you don't know those things, what the hell are they? Well, Sea of Tranquillity is run by a fabulous bloke in America. They do exist, called Pete Pardo, who has probably heard more music than you've heard of, would be my instinct. Um, he's knowledgeable on all sorts of things, and most importantly, he's passionate about it. Because knowing stuff is one thing, but actually conveying passion about these things is not always achieved by other lesser channels. I'm not looking at this one. Are you? Hmm. The channel covers not everything, but it covers a lot of rock, um, and all subgenres: metal, prog. There's fusion, touch of AR, and melodic rock. If you're into any of that sort of thing, you should watch the channel. And if you're just going to watch one show on the channel, because there's a wide variety of them, the best, again, in my opinion, the one that counts, is the UK connection, which sees Pete joined by two. How to possibly describe these people? Men is what I'm going to go for. Definitely not contentious to say that these are two men. You have Stephen Reed from Keath in Scotland, and our Uncle Simon, not my Uncle Simon, but all of our Uncle Simon, Simon Bray from Lancashire. Um, and between them, they talk utter nonsense, but often get things right whilst doing so. And whether they do or not, they're highly entertaining. So, as you can see, the differences between that and what I'm doing are immeasurable. They have kind of a few different things that they do from time to time. They have an AOR/melodic rock show where they look at a classic, an underground classic, and a different album that's hard to describe without context. They do rankings of songs on albums, so pick an album and rank the songs from worst to best. They go through an artist's back catalogue and pick out their two favourites, the least favourites, and something in the middle. And sometimes they just do a random one-off thing that's come up somehow. So in December, which is not very long ago, but feels like it was, they did a show about title tracks. Primarily, they were looking at their 5 favourite and 5 least favourite title tracks, as in how good the songs were. Okay. Now, the title tracks is an interesting one. There's so much you can say, and they covered quite a lot, but there were things that they didn't cover. So I'm going to. Because I was simply going to leave a comment on that video, as I often do on videos, generally theirs in particular. But that comment got what can only be described as stupidly long, even by my standards. So I just abandoned it and didn't post anything. But now, lo and behold, it's 2024, and I've also become a person who talks nonsense on the internet about music. So, hooray! So I've taken it upon myself to make the unauthorized, unofficial, and probably vastly inferior sequel to that show. So welcome. We're talking title tracks. First thing I'll mention that they didn't is at least I don't think they did, is the whole concept of title tracks as an album title. Personally, I've always found them a bit of a lazy option. Not quite as lazy as just calling your albums Chicago 7, 13, 38, but not far off. I do quite like an album title that comes from lyrics that are somewhere on the album, but not actually the name of a song on the album. I don't know how that is any different, but it somehow works for me a little bit better. It's looking for kind of an Easter egg. One other little thing that they didn't cover, which I'll mention briefly, is title tracks that aren't. And for that to make sense, I'll go back to these two albums, which I've talked a bit about before. This was Dark Fighter from Rival Sons. The last track on this album is called Dark Side. The first track on this one, the album is called Lightbringer. The first song is called Dark Fighter. There's not a track called Lightbringer on here or on here. So that's odd. But it's all houses of the holy kind of thing, isn't it? That's the other prime example that springs to mind when you're talking about a title track that appeared on an album a bit later. Sheer Heart Attack's another. You could probably think of more. I can't, but you can. Put them down below if you can come up with 5, I'll give you a prize. Which is a free subscription to the channel. Highly sought after. Oh wait, anybody can have that. Oh, look, I forgot. Before I get into the proper meat of what I'm talking about title tracks today, this is not the UK connection, so we have to talk about what we're drinking. Thing is, I don't really drink, so what I've got can only be described as a glass of Thames Water's finest, but in a swanky Coca-Cola glass. So hey, it's no Goblet of Doom, but it's something. Now I'll just have to do the taste test of this. That is definitely watery. I'm going to say that's a solid 3 out of 5. Hi guys. Yeah. I'm just going to say, because at the start of each episode, they go through what beer they're drinking or other alcoholic beverage, and some people are very dull and wish they'd shut up. But personally, I think it's just proof that they can talk about anything and be entertaining. But the whole feeling of the show is that you're hanging out with some mates and just having a structured chat, but a chat that could go anywhere about something that you're all interested in. And I think the beverages plays into that, and it fits the show perfectly. So, as a non-drinker, yay for the beer bit. And if you missed the episode where Simon and Stephen are trying to keep in the howls of laughter that arise from Pete talking about washing out his growler, well, you had to be there. You can be there. I don't know which episode it is, so you just had to watch them all. There's 1 or 60 to go through. So that's what I'm going to say about that. And now to the actual meat of the episode. Today I'm talking about something that they really didn't cover at all on their title track episode, and that is title tracks that make the terrible album titles. Now, I'm going to start off with my first choice is the one that always springs to mind when I think about this, and that is Kansas. Song for America. Now, you're thinking, I'm mad. Song for America is an amazing track. Yes, it is. I'm not talking about whether the track's any good or not. I'm talking about, is that an album title? And it's not. It's Song for America, not Album for America, which would be an even worse title, but at least accurate. And when an album title is so bad that you don't even put it on the cover of the album, you should probably just call the album something else. Um, I have no suggestions. How Kansas 2 would have been an improvement, come to think of it. This is the second album, yeah. So we'll rename Song for America Kansas 2. It has the first appearance of the proper Kansas logo on that album. So let's call it Kansas 2. And then get into the proper titles with Mask later. Yeah. That would have been a way to go. Similar lines, my number 2 choice today is Steely Dan. Asia. Again, you probably worked it out by now that no, I'm not saying Asia is a terrible song, because I've not been saying. It's a brilliant song. It's a brilliant album. But as an album title, I love the song. I still don't know what Asia is or what it means. So what does it mean? What does it tell you if you're browsing through, flipping through the racks at the record store as you were in 1977? I'm sure I wasn't, but you might have been. And you come across this thing and like, new Steely Dan album. Aja. See, you haven't heard the album. You don't know how to say it yet. You certainly don't know what it means. Doesn't mean anything. It's not a great album cover either. So, on the whole, that's a miss. If they wanted a title track from that album, no, they should have just done one of their cleverer ones, like Countdown to Ecstasy and even Katie Light. Something from Luke somewhere. Next up, and this is, well, what is this? You could argue that it's not a title track at all, but I'm going to argue that it is. And it's another terrible album title. I've actually got this one to show you. As viewers of my first ever video, which is like 10 videos ago, if that, will know my favourite band is Marillion. My least favourite title track from Marillion, or album title, or whatever, it's this. Now, if you don't know the album, you're saying, Fear is not. What? It's a pretty good album title. Fear could be about anything. But that's not the album title, is it? I did show you it, but you can't see it because it's such tiny print because they're so embarrassed by what they've called the album. And the first word's even censored. Let's fuck everyone and run. If you had to censor your own album title and be embarrassed by it, again, you could have just called it anything else. Now that's where I'm talking about the contentious part of whether it's a title track. Is it's part one of the New Kings. Most normal human beings would think that the New Kings is one track with multiple parts. But, starting with this album, they hadn't done it before, but they've done it here and they've done it on An Hour Before It Starts, which is the most recent one. They've split quite a few of the longer tracks into little sections, primarily to earn themselves what could only amount to about 3 extra pennies from Spotify streaming rates, which seems utterly worthless and just annoying to me. Because if you have the CD, you can throw it all into iTunes and link the songs together so that it plays nice and smoothly as a single track. If you're a cheapie like me and we're only listening on streaming, then you might get ads in the middle of a song just because they've split it up that way. And I don't advocate. I do advocate buying albums. I don't advocate paying for Spotify. But you do you. But yeah, this is. Didn't even like the album. I know. But it's not a good title. It really isn't. Okay, bringing things back to the channel of origin that started this whole mess. One of the selections And I can't remember off the top of my head who brought it. Could have been any of them. But it was only one of them. They can remind us down below themselves if they want. Somebody said one of the worst title tracks in history is I Can't Dance by Genesis. But there isn't a Genesis album called I Can't Dance, is there? No, it's called We Can't Dance. Because Genesis is not one person. It's, at that time, it was three. So calling it I Can't Dance would have been terrible. I mean, I'm not saying that I Can't Dance is a brilliant song. It's utter trick. Otherwise, I liked it. But that song was utter trick. No two ways about it. But the album is not called that. So I need to pull you up on that, whoever you were. I think it was Simon, but I could be wrong. So can't have been Simon, because he's only got Genesis by Genesis, so it must have been the other bloke. There's another album that has been covered by these gents on their channel that has a similar I Can't Dance, We Can't Dance issue going with it, in that it's from a group with 5 or 6 members, but the title references me. So who in the Doobie Brothers is me? I'm talking, of course, about The Captain and Me, which 2/3 of the Sea of Tranquillity panel rightly recognise as a classic album, and the other third had an insane day. Occasionally that happens, where one of them will be utterly wrong about everything they say on a particular show. And that week it was Mr. Stephen Reed himself. He's often the more sensible. And that's just blatantly not true, is it? Sorry, Stephen. There's actually decent title tracks on there. You could look at China Grove. That would have been or Long Train Runner. That's a good. If you had to have a title track, that's a good one. Hey, it's the name of your singles, so people will remember. Oh, Doobie Brothers. Oh, China Grove. Oh yeah, I know that one. Maybe I'll buy the album. Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? And there's other albums like that. One that springs to mind for me and probably literally nobody else is I'll Play For You by Seals and Crofts, who, as you probably worked out just from the name, even if you've never heard of them, are a duo. So you can't call it We'll Play For You. In that particular case, the song title doesn't work either for a duo. It's actually a really good album if you like 70s soft rock. And you're thinking I'm wild going from the Doobie Brothers to Seals and Crofts. But wait, am I? Because they're both on Warner Brothers, and the Doobie Brothers even covered Seals and Crofts. They did Coffin Love. So there. Okay, now we're building up very excitingly to what I can only describe as my final choice. And I want you to play along. I want you to work out what album I'm talking about before I reveal it. So, your first clue is this album is from 1988. The album cover is predominantly blue in hue, and it is a legendary band's 7th album, a fact which is referred to in the title of the album and therefore in the title track of the album. So, what album are you picturing in your heads? No, of course I'm not talking about Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. Ha! Did I get you? Did I get you? No, this is brilliant. As far as title tracks go, great. What I'm actually talking about is Toto. The 7th one. Okay, it's your 7th album, and while you quite happily called your 4th album Toto 4, you don't want to just be so blatant to make it look exactly like it is, which is trying to recreate the look and probably sales of Toto 4 with your 7th album and call it Toto 7. So you called it the 7th one. It's a rubbish title, isn't it? It's a brilliant album. It's a rubbish title. And yet again, there's somebody out there saying, hey, hang on a moment, JSP. The seventh one doesn't have a title track. Well, in most of the world, that is true. But for those who are Japanese, it is not the case. The bonus track on that album is the title track. And anywhere else, you had to buy I believe you had to buy the Pamela single to get the seventh one on the B side, if you were so inclined. Well, this is the early days of Japanese bonus tracks, and bands were mostly doing what Toto did here. I'm going to talk about the song. Forget the title. Unlike some of the others, Asia, Song for America, the seventh one is not a great song. This is a band throwing a jam together because they've been told need another track for the Japanese market. And lyrically, it is basically Joseph Williams auditioning for Sesame Street. That's the only way I can describe it. It's basically learning to count to 7 for the most part of the song, which stretches for over 6 minutes. It's almost the longest song on the album, after Home of the Brave. It's after Home of the Brave, but you get what I mean. Please tell me you get what I mean. So a sample of those lyrics, just pure poetry, really. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The seventh one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The seventh one. Repeat ad nauseum. You do eventually get a different line, which is today we walk around the world. Quite a lot of times. And then, in the sheer excitement of it all, Joseph forgets how to count past 5. And so you get a moment where he's going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He gets to 6 eventually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7th one. The only good thing about that section of the song is it's possibly the greatest misheard lyric in my house growing up. Because, as Joe was saying, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My mother looked at me witheringly and said, I want to eat more pie. If only that had been the lyrics. They were much better. How many pies he wanted to eat, I don't know. Could he get to the 7th pie? Okay, so there you have it, folks. That's what I consider the 5 worst album titles that are title tracks of all time. I'm sure I've missed some, so again, feel free to drop down below with anything that you think makes for a terrible album title that also happens to be a title track. Terrible album titles in general might be something we talk about another time, or it might not be. I've no idea. I'm not one for planning, as they do, 17 years in advance. So I'm thinking fortnight by fortnight, really. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed joining me here at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. Not filming at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. I don't know when they film. I don't know when I'm filming. Oh, yes, I do. It's about 2 o'clock on Tuesday. There we go. Anyway, that is it for me for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video. When and indeed if that ever happens. Bye for now.